Spurgeon here with RevZilla TV to talk to you today about Woodcraft Clip-Ons available at RevZilla.com. So Woodcraft Clip-Ons you're going to want to add to your bike if you're on the track. They're going to be lightweight, they're going to be easy to replace in the event of a crash, and they're going to increase feel, putting a little bit more pressure on your front tire. If you're on the street, they're going to allow you to manipulate where your OEM setup sits, so you can kind of give yourself some rise, give yourself some lean in, or you just want to improve the look and you still want that ease of replacement in the event of a crash. Now, when you're selecting the Woodcraft Clip-Ons for your bike, first place to start is the bike finder. There's a few kits out there that are going to be bike specific. Ninja 250s, 300s, Ducati Monsters. There's going to be some bike specific options, so start there. If you don't find a bike specific kit, on the product page, you'll see a chart that's going to list out the diameter of your fork tubes. You need to know the diameter of your fork tubes because that's the clip-on that you need to select. That's where it's going to fit around your fork tube. Once you have the right setup for your bike, install is going to be a 2 out of 3 on our BSD, our Beard Scale of Difficulty for installation. We'll talk more about install at the end. Right now, let's jump in and talk about what sets the Woodcraft Clip-Ons apart from other clip-ons out in the market. So Woodcraft was founded by Eric Wood, who has been racing motorcycles since he was 5 years old. Worked his way up through the ranks, went to college, got a degree in engineering, and then went back to doing what he knows and what he loves, and that's motorcycles. Except for this time, instead of racing them, he decided to make products that are going to benefit the racers out there on the track, as well as riders that are on the street. First and foremost, everything Woodcraft does is designed with the track rider in mind, and a lot of that technology and thought out process really trickles down to work great for you street riders as well. So let's take a look at the clip-ons that we have in front of us. So starting with the actual bar itself. The bar itself is going to be from T6 6061 aluminum, and it's done because it looks great, has a tendency to bend, not break, and it's super strong, and it's going to give you a nice long life out of it. It's going to be available in 2 different colors. You're going to see the silver aluminum in front of me, and then you're going to see the black on my right-hand side here. This is going to also be available in 2 different lengths. The standard bar length is going to be 12 inches, and then you're also going to see an extended length at 13.5 inches. That extended length is great if you want to add any Woodcraft accessories, or simply you want a little bit more room for all the crowded things that you have mounted to your bars. The diameter of the bars are going to be available in 3 different flavors. Standard sport bike riders out there, you guys are all rocking 7/8 inch bars, and the majority of you are going to choose the 7/8 inch option. There's a couple of you 1-inch riders out there, and I'm one of them on my Bonneville T100, the Thruxton, the late model Thruxtons. Any of you guys out there with a Harley Sportster and you want to go with more of a kind of cafe look, you're going to need to go with the 1-inch bar. They've also got you covered for some of you out there rocking really rare older European bikes with a 22mm bar. They actually make their bars in a 22mm diameter as well. So they really cover the entire range of what you could possibly need. Now, this bar is going to mount itself to your actual fork tube using a clamp and riser setup. Now, the clamp and riser setup is going to be, this is where you need to figure out the diameter of your actual fork tube itself. This is going to mount around your fork tube, and it's going to be set in here at a 7-degree angle. So what this means is when this is mounted flush to your fork tube, the bar naturally sits at a 7-degree angle. And they chose that because they went out and they tested on the track where it was most comfortable for the most amount of riders. And they found that your hand naturally sits at a 7-degree angle in its most comfortable position, and that's going to actually allow the bar to fit where your hand would naturally fall. So it's the most natural kind of point and angle for this to be set up. So there's no adjustments that you have to need or you have to make. It's already done for you. The other thing I want to point out with this clip with the riser setup is that it's going to be a split hinge design. And what I mean by this is that some of the other manufacturers out there will use a hinge system, or they're going to use a system that slides on over top of your fork tube. Woodcraft doesn't do that. They give you 2 bolts on each side, 4 bolts all together. It's going to give you the same strength as a hinge system, but this split design is basically going to save anywhere from $50 to $75 off the manufacturing cost, and they're able to pass that savings on to you, the rider. So it's going to give you the same strength as a hinge system, it's just going to be a little bit cheaper to actually manufacture. The other thing you need to keep in mind is your rise, and this is going to be the most important factor when figuring out which clip-on setup to go with. So when we're talking about rise, we're talking about rise in correlation to the actual clip-on from Woodcraft. We're not talking about rise from your OEM manufacturer. Let me explain. So let's say you're out there and you're riding a Suzuki GSX-R 750. Suzuki is known for having a 1-inch rise built into their clip-on. If you want to actually rise your stance up a little bit, you would have to go to a 2-inch riser from Woodcraft to give yourself 1 inch of rise over the fact that you already have that 1-inch lift on there. So if you like exactly where your bars sit on a Suzuki, you don't want to go down, you don't want to go up, then you're going to want to get a Woodcraft riser with a 1-inch lift to it, because that's going to match up with your OEM stance. So it's very important for you to know exactly what you're looking for, or exactly what you already have on your bike, before you decide whether you want to go up or go down. If you've got an inch lift built in, you're going to need to go to at least 2 inches to give you that rise. Now, Woodcraft risers are going to come in a couple of different flavors as well. You've got no lift to it, so it's going to actually be no lift, no rise whatsoever. 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 2.5 inch, and 3 inch. If you're going from something with no lift to it whatsoever up to a 3-inch rise, the one thing you have to keep in mind is whether or not your cables and cords are going to reach. So your clutch cables, your brake cables, and your the actual cords and the wiring that goes up to your handlebar setup, they might not be long enough if you're jumping from no lift to 3 inches. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this project. It might be something where you get this all torn apart and now you have to buy new cables to get the actual lift that you're going for. Also keep in mind, if you're running a full fairing bike, when you actually turn your handlebars left and right, if you go down too low or up too high, you might run into the fact where your handlebars are actually hitting your fairing. So this is all stuff that you need to kind of play around with and look at your bike before you decide which lift risers to go with. The last thing that I want to touch on here is that you need to make sure you're using the bike finder first. Like I talked about in the beginning, there's certain riders out there that are going to have bike-specific mounts. Ninja 250s, Ninja 300s, Ducati Monsters, I think the Panigale is one of them. Make sure you're using the bike finder. And I pulled one of the bike-specific mounts to give you an example. This is off of a Ducati Monster. Now that's going to go from a handlebar setup to a clip-on setup. And they do this through this unique mounting plate that's actually going to fit on the top of your triple tree. One of the really cool features about this is the fact that it's reversible. So if I want, and you can get it in, again, different rises, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. I got the 1-inch rise in front of me. So I put this on top of my triple tree, and you'll see the handlebars actually rise up 1 inch to meet my hands. Let's say I want to drop my look down. I want to go even more aggressive, more stealthier. Flip this around, and now I've got a 1-inch dip. So it actually lowers me down 1 inch. So this plate is reversible. Again, CNC aluminum, and it's got the nice Woodcraft etched in there on both sides. So again, super reversible, super versatile, just a nice feature, and it's going to work great for any of you guys out there with that bike-specific design. This again is for the Ducati Monster. So Woodcraft has done a great job of giving you a wide variety of products that are going to work great to change the stance of your motorcycle. The other thing I want to point out as we get into installation for this is that the grips that we see on here don't come with it. I just threw those on there to kind of give you an idea of what these look like as you start to install them on your bike. Now, install is going to be a 2 out of 3 on our BSD, our Beard Scale of Difficulty for installation. The first and foremost thing that you need to keep in mind is you have to get that diameter for your fork tube correct. Once you have that down, getting your OEM equipment off is probably going to be the hardest task. I know when I've installed these on motorcycles before, getting all of your OEM junk off usually takes about an hour in itself. And then once you go to install these, again, keep in mind, because there's no hinge and because there's no lock mounting point that you have to slide over fork tubes, it's simply clip these onto your fork tubes and you're set to go. Install will actually take a little bit quicker than the deassembly of your OEM setup. You're probably looking about 2 to 3 hours. It's 4 bolts. The one thing that I want to keep in mind as you're slowly putting all this stuff back together, you're ratcheting all your bolts down, use Loctite. The last thing you need is to be flying down the highway or the track and you haven't used Loctite, those bolts kind of vibrate loose and you slide forward on one of your grips, you're going to be in some trouble. So make sure as you're assembling all this stuff back together, using Loctite on all the bolts to keep everything nice and locked into place. I think Woodcraft did a fantastic job of giving you a wide variety of products that are going to work from everything from a vintage CBR cafe build that you're doing up to a brand new Ducati Panigale that you're putting together for the track. These products are extremely versatile and I'm a huge fan of the Woodcraft brand in general. There's a lot of folks out there rocking the Woodcraft products. If you'd like to hear more about what they have to say, click below. Read what other riders think and what they feel about the Woodcraft setups they have on their bike. More questions for us? Never hesitate to give us a call. 877-792-9455 will get you on the phone with a Gear Geek, or simply type us out an email, cs@revzilla.com. Thank you for joining us for this look at the Woodcraft Clip-Ons. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.